when your identity tools do not talk to each other, you cannot see an attacker move from hijacked human session to an unmanaged machine to an AI agent. Silos do not just create complexity. They create catastrophe. It is an honor for me to stand here with you today at the dawn of a new era for identity. And to understand where we are going, we have to look back on how we got here. Over 25 years ago, CyberArk built a safe. It was designed with a simple and noble purpose to protect digital assets. But then something interesting happened. A customer told us they were not just using the safe for general files. They were using it to store admin credentials. They also told us they didn't really like the word safe because it felt really just a bit too small. They wanted to call it a vault. That was the spark. That was the moment privileged access management market was born. And at the time, the analyst at Gartner gave it a clinical name, SUPM, stands for Super User Privilege Management. And for the longest time, that's exactly what PAM was. It was Super User Privilege Management. It was a world of physical servers, local admins, and a handful of people who held the keys to the kingdom. It was a very simpler time with a really well-defined perimeter and a manageable number of targets. Those days are gone. Everything has changed. Our environment, our identities, and the entire attack landscape have shifted fundamentally. We have moved from a single isolated data center into incredibly complex environments. We are managing distributed clouds, hundreds of SaaS applications, and thousands of microservices. This has led us to an ever-increasing attack surface. Every point of connection is now a potential point of entry. And to make matters worse, we are no longer facing opportunistic hacker of the past. We are facing sophisticated and AI-armed cyber criminals. These adversaries using the same agentic tools we use to automate their defense, making identity the #1 target. Identities, privilege, and risk are already pervasive throughout your entire environment. Let us start with the human users. We used to think privilege was reserved only for the IT admins in our environment. Today, every human identity can become a privileged identity. Whether it is a developer pushing code, a cloud operator managing infrastructure, or a business user accessing sensitive data, they all have the power to impact the business. The data tells us a dark story. 96% of human users today have access beyond what is strictly required to do their job. 96%. We are living in a permanent state of overprivilege. This uncontrolled privilege means that for almost every person in your organization, an attacker does not need to find a vulnerability. They just need to find the login. But humans are no longer the primary resident of the network. Machines have taken over at a scale that is really difficult to comprehend. For every human being in your enterprise, there are now 109 machine identities. These are the non-human identities like API keys, service accounts, and secrets buried in your CI/CD pipelines that run your business at a machine speed. This is hidden access to your highest risk systems and data. They are the silent majority of your identity state. They are growing exponentially, and in most organizations, they are operating entirely in a disconnected silos. Now let's add the newest and most volatile persona to the mix, which is, of course, the AI agents. These agents have memory, they have skills, and they act autonomously. They are being deployed faster than any technology in history, yet governance is non-existent. 94% of companies admit they lack the proper security controls for AI agents. You know, we have allowed AI adoption to drastically outpace our controls. These agents are being delegated to act as us, on behalf of, but they operate in governance vacuum, where we cannot really reduce their credentials. We have given AI the arms and legs to act, but we have not given it the nervous system of security. So why are we in this position? We're in this position because the industry is fighting a platform scale war with a collection of fragmented point products. The issue is in how the identity market itself evolved. Standalone access management focuses on operational management, not security. Traditional PAM solutions focus narrowly on IT admins. Legacy identity governance is pretty complex and slow. Machine identity grew in a disconnected silo, and AI identity is emerging as yet another layer. Sometimes they come from different vendors. Sometimes they come from the same vendor, but remain loosely integrated. They always leave gaps. And to compensate, organizations keep adding more and more tools, like identity threat detection and response. These silos create the gaps where attackers live. When your identity tools do not talk to each other, you cannot see an attacker move from hijacked human session to an unmanaged machine to an AI agent. Silos do not just create complexity. They create catastrophe. And the result of this fragmentation is inevitable. Identity is the #1 attack vector today. 9 out of 10 organizations experience at least one successful identity-related breach. And Palo Alto Networks Unit 42 tells us that in 90% of the incidents, an identity weakness played a role. Attackers are no longer breaking in. They are logging in. And they steal credentials, abuse standing access, escalate privilege, and move laterally using legitimate pathways. When identity is compromised, everything downstream, the cloud infrastructure, SaaS platform, the data itself can become exposed. Identity is no longer just part of security architecture. It is the attack surface. In the AI enterprise of tomorrow, this will become even more challenging. The enterprise is being redefined, not by the software alone, but by how work gets done. From employees using agentic browsers to sync CRM data, to developers building AI-driven endpoints, AI is becoming the digital surface of the enterprise. We are moving toward a world where identity will become more dynamic, more distributed, and much more chaotic. Risk is turning exponential. AI agent growth is now significantly outpacing human growth. We're no longer just managing people, but a high-speed autonomous workforce. This creates risk we have never seen before. Unchecked agent access and weaponized intelligence moving at machine speed cause traditional defense to fail. This compounds daily into a state of identity chaos. We have reached the point where the speed of the AI agents has officially outrun the manual speed of the administrator. You heard Nikesh, we have reached to our inflection point. The state of the identity market must evolve fundamentally in order to keep up with the agentic future we have described today. We can no longer pretend that adding another tool, another silo capability will fix the problem. Yesterday's silo simply cannot solve the problem of tomorrow. You, as an identity and security leader, must meet this moment. You are the architects of the next era of defense, and you lead the transition from administrative management into active security. What is required is a cohesive identity security platform. The only effective answer to the existing chaos is a single, unified architecture that protects all identities, including human, machine, and agentic. The modern enterprise requires breaking down the silos and deep inefficiencies found within the current point product reality. This means redefining security controls that were once reserved only for a few users and establishing them as a universal standard for all. Such an approach fundamentally disrupts the legacy market of PAM, IAM, and IGA. Those markets were designed for a static world, but in the agentic era, it demands a platform built for a dynamic one. This is a mandatory evolution of identity security, bringing together world-class identity intelligence with an integrated security fabric to create a foundation that cannot be broken. This is why we are here today. I'm incredibly proud to introduce IDRA. IDRA is a cohesive identity security platform built especially for the AI enterprise. We have taken the trusted and best-in-class DNA of CyberArk and infused it with the global scale and AI precision of Palo Alto Networks. IDRA is a cohesive system that can continuously discover all identities, control privileges, and govern access across the entire enterprise. It enables organizations to both find and remediate identity risk at machine speed. Discover, control, govern. These are not new ideas, but the way we apply them has fundamentally changed. Let's start with discovery. For a long time, discovery meant inventory, a point-in-time view of what exists in the system. But there is no longer enough, because identities do not just exist. They evolve. They gain access. They lose access. They interact with new systems. They behave differently over time. So discovery has to be continuous. It has to be contextual. And it has to be intelligent. This means not just identifying the identities, but understanding how they behave, what they access, and where they introduce risk across environments. And it means surfacing that risk in a way that teams can actually use, and with context to understand it, and a remediation path to reduce it. This is why discovery in IDRA is paired with enhanced context, with centralized visibility and AI-driven risk analysis, not just a list of identities. Once you're figured out and you have the level of visibility, you can move into control. And this is where one of the biggest shifts happens, because historically, access has been static. Users were granted permissions. Those permissions persisted. And over time, those permissions accumulated. That created standing risk, because once entitlement exists, it can be exploited. What we are doing instead is making privilege dynamic. Access is granted when it is needed. It is evaluated continuously, and it is removed when it is no longer required. So instead of asking who has access, we start asking a more important question. Who should have access right now? And that model applies across the full identity spectrum. For human identities, that means zero standing privilege, and just-in-time access to modern systems. For machine identities, it means stronger workload identities and secrets control. And for agents, it means fine-grained action control and governed delegated access. And then governance. Governance ensures that this remains true over time. Because identity security is not just about the moment of access. It's really about the full life cycle. How identities are created, how access is assigned, how it changes over time, and how it is eventually removed. That life cycle has to be continuous. It has to be automated, and it has to be consistent. Because the risk does not come from what you configure once. It comes from what drifts over time. And the key shift here is that governance is no longer a periodic compliance exercise. It becomes a continuous operational control. AI-powered policy helps move organizations from manual reviews and siloed workflows to automated governance to keep pace with the scale and velocity of the modern enterprise. Our vision is clear. One platform, every identity.